What's going on, everybody? John Ramdeen alongside my pal Robin Black. This is the championship rounds as we talk about everything that's going on in the world of mixed martial arts. Going through a change right now.
Oh, what do you think?
As we look around, maybe a little different than the last time you've seen us.
We were in Vegas last
time at Vince Neil's place, rocking and rolling. We had a great time there. But we're looking ahead. We got to talk about what's going on in London, England. Jimmy Manuwa, Corey Anderson in the main event. But I know for our money, I think we got to talk about the most interesting fight: Alan Jouban taking on Gunnar Nelson, 170 pounds. Can we talk about 205 first? Can we just give a brief description of Jimmy Manuwa and Corey Anderson? What do you like about Jimmy Manuwa?
He's a little sharper, I think, than we think. And by we, I mean the global we. I think he has a much crisper and more technical understanding of putting knuckles on people's chins than he's given credit for. Playing with the space between you and drawing you into different angles and stuff. Jimmy Manuwa is a real fighter. He's if you're British, this is your guy. You know what I mean? And it's funny, we heard Dana saying that. Dana,
and it's true.
Vegas, I mean,
it's because he's fun to watch. He puts people to sleep. That's his game. Almost the modern day Chuck Liddell. We're not going to the ground. I keep this fight standing, and I'm going to give you a spectacular knockout.
Another British guy over at Bellator, Paul Day.
You know
exactly. What I mean? There's a certain breed of these guys, and everybody gets it. There's, you know me. I'll get a little bit over romantic about the beauty of some of these things sometimes, but that's really how I see it.
Of course.
But there are other times where you can see that in a fighter like Manuwa, but you don't have to. Because you get it. When he puts that hard hook on somebody or puts that uppercut, his feet are attached to the ground in a way that he generates force. It doesn't require a lot of, you don't need a whole lot of analysis. You can look at that and feel the visceral nature of what he does. And Corey Anderson's the right guy for him to fight.
Corey Anderson, when you look at his last fight against Jan Blachowicz, just a talented individual. He's good striking. He's good in the creative department. He's super athletic. What does he need to do to try to set traps to make sure he does not make this fight a technical stand-up striking battle?
Yeah, I think he's got to be calm too. It's a weird assignment. You can imagine that? Like Jimmy Manuwa's standing over there and he's kind of looking at you, and you've been thinking about it all week, and you've been looking at footage on him for weeks, and you've been training stuff, and now it is the thing. And that's the thing that there's no substitute for. But the more these guys do it, the more they're capable. But for Corey Anderson now, you're in England. He's in a main event. You know, there's a lot of extra pressure. He's got to be able to go out there.
25 minutes.
Yeah, 25 minutes. There's a lot going on. He's got to be able to go out there and just be, when you think about it, we don't want it to be too much of a technical striking battle unless we're sharp. Unless we're real sharp and we're making him miss, and then let's play technical all night, Let's be precise. But Manuwa,
can you fall in love with that? Yeah,
Manuwa's the guy that, of the two of them, is a little more seasoned. So you're Corey Anderson, and create chaos. That's something a thing we've been throwing out as a concept. So, and what does it mean? You want to make create the unpredictability. And he can do that. He can definitely do that and get Manuwa off his game. But Manuwa's going to be the favorite in England in a main event.
Of course. Crowd's going to go bonkers. Just when this guy comes out, it's going to be awesome. But if I was there, this 170-pound matchup, Gunnar Nelson, the training partner and teammate of one Conor McGregor, he's a phenom, really, in my opinion, a martial arts phenom. When you look at, just the two different aspects, his weird stand-up game where he incorporates that old school karate game into this modern landscape, in this phenomenal groundwork that he can do, where he can choke you out if he wants to, but if he can beat you up on the ground, it's like one of the most spectacular things in the world. And for Alan Jouban, for him to be able to float around and kick and attack and stop the takedowns and do his game, super awesome to think about.
Super awesome. And the game changes rapidly. We almost can't use some of the same concepts to talk about it. Baseball or football or any game is way different than it was 20 years ago. In fighting, it's way different than it was 2 years ago because of the speed at which it's changing and how new it is. And these guys are playing a very different game of coloring outside the lines. It'll be interesting because Jouban, you see, improving, getting more comfortable, more, I'm at a loss sometimes to find the right word or find the right way to describe the way that they play in 3 dimensions now. And Jouban's become really good at this. But this is another level of it. You know what I mean? The thing he's really become really good at out on the feet, Gunnar Nelson has been playing this kind of deceptive 3-dimensional game for his whole lifetime. And if he's on his game, he could blow people's minds. But at the same time, as they get better, Gunnar Nelson's going to be better than he's ever been.
Of course.
And he's been spectacular. But so is Jouban. All of these guys are elevating so rapidly. Like, the game is so different than it was even 6 months ago.
But when you think about specific, and I don't necessarily want to use the word style, but you can understand specifically Gunnar Nelson and Alan Jouban have a specific or a distinct style to the way that they conduct business inside of the cage. So when you think about both guys, because when you imagine 2 athletes at this level, very close to getting into that championship conversation, you'd expect that they're always going to take it. When all the variables that they can control, they're going to control all those, and they're going to put the time and energy to be in the best version of them that they possibly can be. So when you take in all of those factors, and you look at the stylistic matchup of Gunnar, of Jouban, who do you see prevailing in that experiment?
It's really cool. It's super cool. Like, this is the fight coming up, and then that's this weekend. We're going to be at our friend West Coast Dave's this weekend. Big shout out to Mike Fife.
Mike Fife, hooking it up.
Yeah, and Dr.
Great
Faisal
supporters.
Raymond, thank you.
Awesome stuff. All the love has been incredible.
It really has. So we're going to be watching that this weekend with Evan Boris and West Coast Dave and Kearns and our friends. And maybe we'll try to do some kind of Facebook Live from there. We'll try. We're learning as we go. Like, these are props. Like we're just figuring it out. We're maybe 22 hours.
This is day 1 for me.
This. Yeah. So, but this is a pretty amazing fight, and it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how they play out in space. But that's been the direction things have been going. But when we talk about how different they look, just picture Chad Mendes in your head.
Yeah, of course.
Or Ben Henderson. Although Ben has been playing one of these weird kind of deceptive games.
That's why he's smooth.
Or even George. George St. Pierre is coming back. Expect him not to look like George St. Pierre. But you picture George, and he's playing this very sound game.
Yeah.
They don't fight like that. Go look at George. And hey, I'm hoping to be back doing breakdowns within days.
It'll be days.
It could be. Things are happening very quickly. But George, I'd love to break down where George was at and then compare.
Try to anticipate.
And compare.
Growth.
We know what he's doing. He's playing around with his old traditional roots of footwork and playing with distance and stuff. These guys just don't look anything like he looked when he fought Johnny Hendricks. That fight, there's no similarity other than it's still fighting. So out there in the space, there's a lot of things going on. That's why I'd love to be digging into that footage.
So what's happening during that time? The last time we saw George in that very close fight with Johnny Hendricks, many people on the Johnny Hendricks bandwagon that believe that Johnny Hendricks should have won that fight. Super close fight. Props to Johnny Hendricks. Props to George St. Pierre for giving an incredible battle.
And their teams.
And their team,
preparation.
All that. Just awesome stuff. But from the time that George said, I'm taking some time, peeps, I'm going to go enjoy my life, to now, what has he been working on specifically? Where do you think that we're going to see this guy shine? As you mentioned, he talked to us about reincorporating karate. So is his game going to be primarily the stand-up game where you avoid the ground and you play the strike? Because the guy that was part of the word out of the TriStar, the strikers are the guys on the rise.
So the TriStar, we were hanging out watching Eamon, Mandel, and Louis. Eamon, of course, had his won a fight, and it was great for him to be pushed like that.
And awesome stuff. Eamon's a hobby. Great.
Yeah, great stuff, man. And Louis and Mandel. And we were watching them and really nerding out. And they got lots of great guys there. They always have. But those are the ones kind of built from the ground up. So I sit down on a little punching bag with Firas, and we're talking about nerdy stuff like we all do. And I asked him, I said, they're different, all three of them, but there's this seam, this thread that clearly ties it together. And he's like, it's just range management. And truthfully, he's right. I mean, the thing that's tying them together, but the idea of range management, and again, I'm a stickler about terms. We commit to them for too long.
Yeah.
The thing we're describing changes dramatically, but our terminology stays in the 90s or the 80s. Sure. A home run's still a home run, but they don't talk about hits the same way as they did in the 60s, right? But the idea of what they do with distance, and they force you to be, so it used to be, you want to be on the ground, but they make you stand.
Yeah.
Now it's, you want to be in a certain range, and they make you in another one. And when you try to adapt to that one, it's a different one.
Yeah.
And so I think what ties this all together, so that's Eamon, and that's Louis, and that's Mandel at the root of what they're built around. And that's at the root of what Jouban and Gunnar Nelson are built around. But the modern game of manipulating, managing distance, however you want to describe it, is not just we stay on the outside and fight on the outside. I think that's a misunderstanding that we have. We're not just agreeing to fight on the outside. We're still manipulating. So with Gunnar Nelson, it is understanding and being sensitive to the time when either he or Jouban or both of them are moving towards each other, make Jouban believe that there are moments where he's moving away when instead he moves in. And take away, remove, disintegrate the space. And that's the new element. And that's, again.
And Jouban knows that, though.
Jouban does know that. But, so, you know,
so
you often know what the guy's doing.
Right,
you show up at that fight fully informed. We know what that guy's game plan is, and sometimes
just keep doing it.
And sometimes you can't do anything about it. Jouban can absolutely win this fight, but it's going to require a lot from him. And now, I don't even, as a fan of Gunnar Nelson and somebody who likes him, admires him very much, I almost don't want to say this out loud, but there has been one that I can think of, and that's Maia. And Connor talked about it, Kavanaugh talked about it, Gunnar talked about it, where he didn't get his performance out of himself. If he has that, he's fucked.
Right.
But if he has his night, Allen could be fucked. Because at his best, Gunnar Nelson's on a level that we aren't barely comprehending. But Damian Maia takes that.
He's on that level too.
It's like, how the hell is he here all of a sudden? And then he's reaching on your back, and then he's coming up, and then he's and you know, Carlos Condit knew exactly that approach. That's Carlos Condit. And don't if you only watched him at different times, you haven't seen his career. Carlos Condit is truly one of the great welterweights of that era and beyond. And I hope he still fights, because there's not a lot of things better than watching Carlos Condit fight. And Damian Maia got to his back with the exact technique that Carlos Condit and Greg and everybody else was probably drilling for 8 weeks. Sometimes that's just the game.
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. So what I imagine is both guys on their A game, and just an incredible,
it's gonna be crazy.
Just an incredible cat and mouse game, if you will.
So we got to spend a little time with Eddie Bravo, down and Ben Saunders, and of course Tony was getting ready to fight. And we were down in Vegas, and Eddie's a cool dude, and he's been always good to us. And I've done his podcast, and he and I were on Joe's together. Dude, the earth is not flat, Ed. My friend. I love you, dude. I do. He's a genius, though. And it's always good because he's so willing to let you pick his mind. If he is your friend or has, appreciation. He's good to us anyways. And so we were talking about, what Tony's been working on. And I got to, Ben Saunders is one of my, I love that guy. Breaking down his omoplata was one of the great thrills for me. But, so we got some insight into what's going on. And Jouban works a lot with Eddie.
Of course.
So I'm dying to see one of these three guys on the ground. But I don't want to see Alan Jouban on the ground with Gunnar Nelson. I don't care who you are, and I don't care what the strategy is. You can't hack your way through Gunnar Nelson's 16 years of greatness in evolution.
But that wouldn't be the game, right? No. The game for Eddie is, once in this position, this is how we escape to get back up and kick him in the face.
For sure. And I was so stoked to see this with Tony, but Eddie has many concepts about locking you down and elbowing you, caving your head in with elbows.
Yeah.
And we haven't got to see it a ton. Ben saw
Jouban
this. We
can
saw
do that.
Tony, we've seen
Tony,
it.
yeah.
Tony's,
Yeah.
was it Barbosa? Yeah, others too.
Yeah.
Jouban may be sitting there prepped. All you got to do
Yeah.
is be able to keep both your legs out. So once you get past the half, still there, but it's not as good.
But how long are you staying there? Is that a temporary position? Do as much damage as humanly possible, then get out of that spot to get back up?
Yeah, and he has routes out of it, and he has routes to shut you down, and routes to make you move, and then use the space to get back up. But I don't know if you're doing that with Gunnar Nelson. And Jouban's brilliant and an awesome fighter, and Eddie's a genius. But this is not somebody we want to do that. But we might be there. So since it's going to be possible that we're there, when we're there, we better have a plan. And they have a plan. And Eddie's the real thing, man. And Eddie's concepts are real and they're unfamiliar. So, but I don't want to be there if I'm so bad.
Yeah. I mean, so many great fights on this card. You get to Reza Madadi taking on Joe Duffy. Who else on this card?
Remember the Reza Madadi? What was his name?
Norman Park.
Norman Park, and he just hurls the first set. Normally, I'm not a sucker for that kind of stuff.
I bought it.
But, but that one was funny. But shit like that, I have an admiration for, and of course, Madadi was angry, as you would be. But I have an admiration with acceptance. You're going to accept the fact that this is something that's going to be a part of your story always.
Yeah.
And you just have to accept it.
Right.
You know? Whoever you are and wherever you've come from or whatever it is, your story is your story. And Reza Madadi's story involves stealing persons.
Yeah,
so he's going to move, he's, I bet, has accepted it to the point that anyone else messes with it, he's like, yes, I've heard this before.
I will tell you though, I think the best move by Norman Park though would have been, as he's coming out to the fight, one of his entourage have the purse and then throw it in the ring to get this guy
for sure. We've seen those that kind of gamesmanship.
I'm gonna kill you, man.
But we've talked about this before. People are like, do I want to get him mad? It sounds counterintuitive, but you kind of do.
You kind of do.
Because if we can get him off this game and he gets all aggressive and
tired.
But those things are real. But while we're talking about sort of acceptance, I just want to take a little second and go on an offside. And it's really cool that people have been so good to us. People have, I can't even tell you. It's really beyond cool. And Brendan Schaub, thank you for saying all those nice things about me. They're lies. But Brendan's a sweet guy. But maybe to stop saying that Fight Network sucks and that you're going to unsubscribe and that you hate them, because those are our friends still.
Yes, they are.
You know what I
Very
mean?
much so.
And those are our friends. And Fight Network actually, things change and life changes, and they did a lot for us. I was going to say we wouldn't be sitting here without Fight Network, but we actually might. But we wouldn't have all of the time to have learned all the things and met the people we've met and stuff. Yeah. So I really appreciate the sentiment that fuck you guys for but business has been I say fighting is about fighting, business is about business, and our friends still work there, so cut them some slack. Yeah. And we're still gonna watch. Saturday night we're gonna watch the undercard.
We're all watching. We're here to support the martial arts community and allow it to grow.
And in Canada,
that's what we're doing.
In Canada, Fight Network, our friends is where we're going to watch fights, and they're gonna still be our friends. But thank you for the sentiment, because. But please cut our friends a break. But thank you.
Okay, also on this card, going down at the O2 Arena in London, England this Saturday. Tom Breeze on the card, taking on Bang Bose. The retirement fight of one of our faves.
Yeah.
When you talk about scrappers, when you talk about talent, a character, an evolved fighter, one of these instrumental characters, certainly in Europe in mixed martial arts. Brad One Punch Pickett, this guy, of course, being a part of Cage Rage in the WEC, and to make that fighter to make the move from the UK to train an American top team.
And his wrestling became quite incredible.
Just incredible.
In a short time at top team. That's my guy, Mike Brown.
Yeah.
And
Mike Brown.
And Dean and all. ATT is killing it. So the only part I'm going to disagree with, I love Brad Pickett.
Yeah.
Fan forever.
Yeah.
His emotion and his passion. Yeah. I relate to passion, but evolved. And I don't mean fighting. He's a very evolved fighter. but as a human being, I'm going to tell you what was the Dean Amasinger. So Brad Pickett comes out of the back, and he's like this, and his testicles are right here. Yeah. As he's clenching them in front of Dean Amasinger. I don't know if this is picking up my... So, and his testicles are hanging down here, and he's swinging them everywhere in front of Dean Amasinger's face. Now, I know why he was doing it. Dean was very stressed out. It was a big show, and he had a...
It was a great show.
Was he fighting George Brito?
I think he was.
Yeah, George Brito has a win over RDA.
Toronto BJJ Jiu-Jitsu coach, all around good dude. Helped MMA here in Ontario.
Now that we have more time, we'll train more. So maybe we'll go visit him. But yeah, testicles, full on, like spidery hairs sticking off them, kind of testicles. Long, weird ones with space in between them and stuff. And cackling like a hyena. Yeah, of course. And I was a fan.
Yeah, how could you not be?
Of course, and I laughed too. But I was like, my first thought was, don't meet your heroes. And then my second thought was, totally meet your heroes, because Pickett was hilarious. And that idea that he came all the way from England, and he knew what his friend needed. His friend needed some testicles. His friend needed to laugh or loosen up or whatever. And we've seen all the best coaches and all the best fighters know how to get to them. Did Dean win that fight? It was a great fight, as I recall.
Oh, that's... You know how many fights we called?
Yeah, I know. We're going to call hundreds more.
I know. My friend. Yeah, of course.
But yes, Brad Pickett, nutsack aside, it's going to be really cool. Like, just... You know, you see these guys in those moments, and most of them don't get to pick how and when it is. Yeah. In England, in the O2 Arena, he has fought there, I'm sure, before, because they have had fights, and of course they put Brad on that show. But you could never have picked this. From Uriah Faber's retirement, give Uriah a hug, and Uriah's the coolest cat, and a nice, sweet dude. And then to go out and have your own night.
Of course.
I mean, that's going to be pretty awesome.
Very cool.
So hopefully we won't be too wasted by that time, because our friends are throwing a party for us.
I'm sure we will be.
Yeah, we will.
Before we go to the next show, because we're calling TKO.
Yes.
We're set to call TKO.
Yes. It'll be live on Fight Network.
Live on Fight Network.
And live on
UFC Fight Pass. Yeah. It's supposed to go down April 7th. From the beautiful La Tohu in Montreal.
It is a stud of an arena.
A sensational fight card. Go online to TKO.
Facebook has TKO has a very active Facebook page.
The main event, Derek Gauthier taking on Jesse Ronson, and some of the best fighters, not only in Canada, but they brought in fighters from all around the world. They want to give the fans a show, and they're going to get a hell of a show. That's Friday, April 7th. The next night, Saturday night, the UFC is in Buffalo. UFC 210?
Yeah, I'm going.
UFC 210. I may be going with you. UFC 210, the main event, Anthony Rumble Johnson, DC Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight championship of the world in the rematch. If we remember what happened the first time, Rumble, boom, floored DC. Yeah.
He's like went flying across the cage like Brock Lesnar, the kind of thing. He survived.
Somehow survived that to choke Anthony Rumble Johnson out. Daniel Cormier, you're the man. Rumble, you're the man. This is going to be a hell of a fight. The idea. I think what the feeling I got from most people is they feel, especially in John Jones' absence, that it is almost Rumble's time.
Well, the huge variable in this one is age.
Yeah.
And the wear and tear on the body of these athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Rumble. AJ used to cut down to 170 pounds.
Insane.
And he was pretty much this size. That's the thing. People thought, he gained weight and whatnot. He's always been huge.
Just tried to kill himself.
I've told this story before, but Keith Jardine versus Chuck Liddell.
Yeah.
Down in Ohio, I was there with Sean Tompkins and the Muscle Shark.
Sean Shirk.
Sean Shirk at something that we went down to. And I remember sitting in the stands and I'm like, that enormous giant looks a lot like Anthony Johnson. And he was just the size he is now. And it was only like a month after he had fought at 170. He's always been that big. And that's his body's been through a lot to do that. He's fought at heavyweight. He's had hard fights and he trains really hard. They call him the Ferrari. at the team with Henry and his team.
Hard work and skill.
Yeah, and efficiency and
Are Ferraris efficient? Like are they?
Yeah, like they're home,
good mileage.
Like yeah. They're like 60 to the gallon or liter or whatever. But he's something very special. Yes. And if you go back and you watch the Phil Davis fight, when AJ stops that first takedown, and Phil Davis, Daniel Cormier, if I say they're of similar levels of wrestling, there will be many who would disagree because of the performances that they've seen.
Based on MMA.
Yeah, but based on what we know about those guys, Dan has been a more high-level night game day performer, and Phil hasn't always, although in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, Phil's been looking good.
But when AJ
Ryan Bader just went to Bellator, so I mean,
the Master Bader.
Sounds
like an insult, but he's been playing that.
Yeah.
But he stopped. AJ stopped like 14 or something, and that could be way off. It might be 8, but it was a lot.
It seemed like
it was a lot.
Yeah.
He stopped a lot of those takedowns. But the thing about Dan is he's just not going to stop.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to be dejected or frustrated. There's something about these true winners, like the best of the best that just going and they can't be broken and nothing can stop them. And you just really admire
They get injured. That's the issue. You've seen that. They break down their bodies.
Dan's 39,
yeah,
I think.
I know. So, there's no way that he can continue to do the things that he's done. So what adjustments are you making to ensure that you are as safe as humanly possible, free of injury when you're going up against the racehorse, the Ferrari?
Yeah, it's hard. Your body, Dan's one of these guys who's probably been drug-free his whole life, which gives him a little longer life, a little longer shelf life than the guys who did a lot of drugs in their 20s, because that breaks down their bodies. Dan's probably been clean his whole life, and that helps him. That'll give him a couple extra years. But how that age and that wear affects this fight is going to dictate. Cormier can totally lose this fight. And I mean, I can't count the number of people and I know Mike Bisping is my friend and I like him and I like watching him fight. But when I said that you and I were sitting there and I said, absolutely, positively he can beat Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, 100%.
And here are the reasons why. And they have to do with performance and skill and the night and all these things. And a lot of people's answer to me was, dude, didn't you watch the first fight?
Yeah.
And we had Mullins in here yesterday, and you talked to Klonsky or any of our friends who look at psychology and performance. Every fight is a unique event.
Yeah, right.
And so the last fight doesn't really mean anything. It really doesn't.
Is that in the grand sense? Like, can each fighter embrace that thought that not just a rematch, that this what my career is? It's just a set of new fights.
Yeah. I mean, that's all our lives are. It's a set of new circumstances, a set of new situations. And Daniel Cormier, John Jones beat him, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretty impressive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he took him 25 minutes. Yeah. And he took one for sure and maybe 2 of those rounds. He's a winner.
Yeah.
He's a winner. And AJ's a winner too. It's a great fight. It's all that. The damage. That's the X factor in this fight. But there's something about this level of guy. And you see it in him, and when you talk to him, and you can just, after enough time around them, you just feel it. This look and feeling and expression and everything that says, there's nothing left. I am not saving anything. My whole life exists for the next 29 minutes. There's 5-1 and 5-1 and 5-1 and 5. And that's it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, we get the greatest fights that we've ever seen. And we know it right away. We know it sometimes by minute 2. Rory and Lawler.
Yeah.
Condit and Lawler.
Yeah.
Lawler and,
I know. Jones Gustafson.
Yeah,
there's just so many. There's just too many.
And this will probably be one of those. Because, I did a breakdown with AJ looking at the footage. And on some level, he knows he didn't have the right performance. And if he has it, you can be the champion. And I say that as a fan and a friend and an admirer of Dan Cormier's, but if AJ shows up with everything he's got at his best on the Sunday morning, he could be the UFC light heavyweight.
I know a lot of coaches say this, but as you pointed out, we were in Las Vegas, and I talked to Javier Mendez, Daniel Cormier's coach, and he's just like...
Man, he looked like he just wanted to talk to you all day.
He was...
Yeah, but you've met him a bunch of times.
I met him a bunch of times.
Yeah, I haven't.
But his whole philosophy, he goes, because you would not believe what the kids are doing these days. He goes, but when you, like you said, Daniel Cormier, and I'm paraphrasing, he goes, when you find yourself a winner, you just want to, see them reach their potential. And he goes, Cormier, there's just no, you don't have to put the effort in because he just polices himself to get better and work his ass off. So
we can all fucking learn something from that.
Yeah.
We're all capable of that, on our own level. But the reason we look at people like this is because this is like not their own level. This is the ultimate level.
Yeah,
Cruz, Cormier, these guys, like, hopefully George will be like that again,
So I think we're going to wrap up this edition of the show. Is this what's happening?
Yeah, wasn't there one other one we were really jazzed about?
Anybody there was something else?
Yeah, of course. There's a million.
Damian Maia, we're talking Masvidal. Is that something we were talking about? We'll talk about that, or
okay, let's touch on that, and then you're coming back Sunday, right?
That's what I mean. So
and I just gotta say, it's such a fucking thrill to have the band back together. It really is, and thank you guys so much for hanging with us. But let's touch on Masvidal versus Damian Maia.
And do you see this fight very similar to the? And again, I'm not taking skill into consideration. I'm just talking about the look of the fight, the idea of the fight, the philosophy of the fight, similar to Alan Jouban and Gunnar Nelson.
I actually don't.
Okay.
I really don't. I think right now Jorge Masvidal is on he knows it. He knows where he is. And he's always kind of been there. And there's been just those moments of like, how did I lose that fight? Oh, I felt like I was winning because I wasn't stressed out by this guy who barely hit me. But then he realized over time, it's like, oh, it isn't what I feel like in a fight that felt effortless, and I showed up and I fought, and I'm pretty sure I won, and I took off. It's like, oh, these three guys, or better yet, take it to such a level that I just shut this guy off. And Jorge fully understands that now. And you see him, if you go and look it up, you hear him, but you also see this swagger in him, where he has his whole life he's understood he's special. But now he knows you know it. You know what I mean? He knows that you know it. And he knows that there's a level of people, and there's always been a level, Rogan, thanks for everything, by the way, Joe. Rogan would be like, oh man, Jorge Masvidal. And we would say that, and other people would say that, and people would be like, what are you talking about? I was like, dude, you gotta understand, like, whether a guy lost 2 decisions that you didn't get, we're just talking about skill and ability to fight. And this guy's ability to fight everywhere. And they'll tell you there's that nature that is him, but they'll tell you in the gym that nobody will work harder at all. And this is ATT's a gym of everybody pushing each other.
Fair enough.
He'll be there first and he'll be there last, and he's good at everything. And wrestling has a flow too. And I talked about the flow in my Jorge breakdown. Wrestling has a flow too. And Damian Maia has been taking you down and getting to your back with flow. And Jorge's not going to get fucking outflowed by anybody. And that includes Damian Maia.
So you believe that he will be able to stop all... I'm sure there's going to be one point where Damian Maia gets Masvidal to the ground. You believe Masvidal finds his way back up and beats up Damian Maia.
I just don't see any scenario in which Masvidal stops the equation. So... if
he's just attacking during all of those,
or moving into something else. So, and I mean, shit, there are moments in his fights where, and I've broken them down in that last one, and in other ones, I did a sort of a black eye segment that was a drinking game on him 3 or 4 years ago when he was fighting Ally Quinta. And there are moments in there, it's like, there are no positions. Like, there's not standing in the ground in the cage and guard and stuff. They just don't exist to him. And there's a lot of fighters trying to move in that direction. But I just don't think he'll surrender position. There'll always be another position to another position. And if he gets caught and choked out, it'll be because Damian Maia is so good
And that's right.
that even in a scenario where a guy will not surrender the position, he still can keep advancing. And is Damian Maia that good? Fucking right, he could be that good.
And that's what I'm trying to understand, because it feels like when you can do that to Carlos Condit, when you can do that to Gunnar Nelson, when you can do that to some of the guys...
The Gunnar Nelson one, it makes you think.
You know what I mean? So it feels like, because, as you pointed out, that Masvidal is a skill guy, Damian Maia is also a skill guy, that he's just not... It's not getting in for the sake of getting in. Everything's deliberate.
Yeah, it's true. Jouban and Gunnar, and Jorge and Damian Maia, like, these are some gifts.
Yeah.
Like, these are some special moments in fighting, and modern fighting, and the future of fighting. It's, the more we're learning, the harder it is to predict. You know what I mean? Do I believe that the guy to be able to handle those moments... Because Damian Maia doesn't really have positions anymore either. It's not like, he takes back control. He flows into some shit
he's
that
beating you up until he gets to the spot.
Yeah, and if he doesn't like that, he moves somewhere else. But it's because other people are still fighting grappling in the way that they were trained, and he's superseded that. And Jorge, I believe, will be one of these guys, and I know that... easily people will capable of and willing to and completely in their right to disagree with me. But I'm telling you, there's something different about Jorge Masvidal.
I love him.
He's truly become one of my favorite fighters. And I tried not to mark out when I met him, and not because I don't want to let these guys... Fuck, if I spend 40 hours on a breakdown on you, I admire your work.
Of course.
But because I want to work with him. I want to bring him on the show. I want to do stuff. People don't give him the credit he deserves as an artist. So I want to do that. But of course, at the same time now, we're saying that, and the other side is Damian Maia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Damian Maia. That's why these fights are great. In a vacuum, one guy, which you admire or appreciate their skill, and nameless, faceless opponent X. Yeah. That's cool.
That is cool.
But when you see them put together with every variable, you get to something very special. We got some unreal fights coming up.
This Saturday night, the UFC returns to the O2 Arena. A bunch of cool fights. 25-minute main event at 205 pounds. The retirement fight of Brad One Punch Pickett. That's it. The first show in the books. The Championship Rounds podcast. We will be back Sunday to talk about all the fallout that went, everything that went down in London, England, and then look ahead to the future, the light heavyweight championship bout between Cormier and Rumble Johnson and everything else that's going on that card. That's it for us. He's Robin Black. I got to thank Mark. I got to thank Aaron. Got to thank my man Chase.
Hanging out.
We'll see you guys on Sunday.